We eagerly await news from North Korea about the situation of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site. As mentioned earlier, foreign reporters are at the scene, but it looks like we won't be able to receive the reports until Friday when they get back to the press center in Wonsan. The Punggye-ri test site holds an important place in North Korea's nuclear program, as it's where all 6 of the regime's nuclear tests have been performed. If this site is shut down, it could effectively signal the end of nuclear testing for now, as there are no other known test sites in North Korea. To explain more about the site and how we should interpret North Korea's decision to shut it down, we have with us Professor Kim Hyun-wook from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Now, as I mentioned, the Punggye-ri nuclear test site is where all of North Korea's nuclear tests have been performed. Can you explain to us how important this site is, and will this shutdown really slow down the regime's nuclear weapons program?
I think this is a very important initial measures for North Korea to abandon its nuclear programs and further tests of nuclear weapons. And also, I think this is a very clear signal of North Korea's willingness and intentions, genuine intentions to give up its nuclear weapons. But still, many things are depending upon the North Korea's U.S. summit meeting. What kinds of deals will be broken at the summit, and how the conditions of two countries' different postures would be met at the summit. So even though this is a very serious signal of North Korea to denuclearize itself, I think further behaviors of North Korea and further abandonment of North Korea's nuclear program, I think will be pretty much depend upon how U.S. and North Korea summit, and afterwards the process of denuclearization goes on.
What do we know so far about North Korea's plans to shut down this test site at the moment?
I think it's definitely trying to shut down the nuclear site. I'm not sure if this really truly means that it will try to dismantle the site, because reports, media reports says that North Koreans are trying to try to block the holes of all these mines and try to make it unusable, which doesn't mean that it's trying to completely destroy the mines. So I think if North Korea wants to reuse it, I think even though it would take some time in the future, I think they can reuse it sometime.
Yes, so for example, I mean, there has been some discussion amongst the media at the moment whether they're going for a dismantling of the test site or a shutdown. I mean, some pundits have described it one way and some described it as the other. I mean, what is your interpretation? Do you think they are literally trying to dismantle it, or is it just a shutdown for now?
I don't think they're trying to completely dismantle the site. If they want to destroy completely, I think complete, annihilation of the area, I think would be something that fits the dismantling of the mines and sites. But I think for now, North Korea is trying to, bring all the rocks into the mine holes and trying to blockade those mines so that, any, approaches to those mines is prohibited, make it unusable. Which means that if later on, if North Korea wants to reuse it, they reopen the blockades and they take out all the rocks inside. And I think it's reusable shutdown rather than complete dismantlement this time.
In that case, if it is just a shutdown and not a dismantlement, what message are they trying to send to the international community and to the U.S. at the moment then?
President Moon mentioned 3 things. According to President Moon, it's a very important initial phase of denuclearization process. And also, secondly, it's a very clear signal that North Korea is seriously considering the North Korea-U.S. summit meeting. And thirdly, it's one of the processes within the Panmunjom agreement between North and South Koreas. So kind of signaling that North Korea is, implementing, truthfully all the, agreements that have been made between two Koreas. So that's what President Moon mentioned. I'm not sure what other signals North Korea is trying to give to the international community. Maybe this is an important signal to the United States that, okay, we are ready to denuclearize, ourselves. Now it's time for the states to be more, favorable to North Korea when two countries prepare for the summit meeting. So I think even though they're shutting down this site, at the same time, I think North Korea's pressures on the United States is, I think, more serious than before, which means that it's trying to use two different tactics towards the United States.
What's interesting is that they voluntarily offered to dismantle and shut down this test site. I mean, isn't there some sort of message that they are trying to send with this? That they are saying that we're ready to denuclearize, but to do it in our own way?
What was that?
I mean, are they showing that they have a willingness to denuclearize? When you say, isn't that the message that they're trying to send to the U.S.?
Yes, that's one important message that they're trying to give to the United States, that they are ready to denuclearize itself. But as I have mentioned before, many things depends upon how two leaders come up in Singapore and meet together and talk about, denuclearization processes and peace processes. This is just a very, symbolic but very small initial phase. I mean, this means that North Korea would give up, current programs ongoing, and this means that North Korea would give up the future nuclear weapons of North Korea, not the past and already developed nuclear weapons of North Korea. So, but the U.S. targets of denuclearization, so-called CVID, targets more on the nuclear warheads and nuclear weapons and nuclear materials that North Korea already possesses, rather than any possible nuclear weapons that North Korea intends to develop in the future. So this is something that is not a core of CVID. Rather, it's more of something for now invisible, something about the future, not something about the present, I would say.
They invited journalists to come watch the shutdown, but they didn't invite any nuclear inspectors or nuclear experts for it. Surely that raises some suspicions that this is more for show rather than for really dismantling the nuclear test site.
Yes, some skeptics are saying that this is some signals of North Korea not to reveal, complete information of, all the nuclear weapons that North Korea already possesses. If the monitors comes there and look at the site and do the verification, I think they can obtain a lot of good information of about all the existing nuclear weapons that North Korea possesses already, which I think will be really helpful for the future verifications. But North Korea is not revealing it. North Korea is not investing experts for verification, which means that North Korea would possibly not be completely open and reveal all the information about all the existing nuclear weapons of North Korea, which is, I think, one of the significant point that we have to look at, which I think is an important point for future possible conflict between the U.S. and North Korea.
Okay, let's move on to other developments that have coming out of North Korea today. North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister, Choi Sun-hee, is quoted in North Korean state media today saying that the summit with the U.S. will depend on Washington's behavior. It's quite threatening language. When this news first broke, there was some concern that this was another sign that the summit was on the rocks. But if we look at another section of the report, if I quote here, "If the U.S. offends our goodwill and clings to unlawful and outrageous acts, I will put forward a suggestion to our supreme leadership to reconsider the North Korea-U.S. summit." Now, that makes it sound like the North Korean leadership are still very much intent on the summit, despite Choi's reservations. What do you make of this announcement today?
I think now the North Korea to take a more initiative in the processes of negotiations with the United States have begun. I think the first steps of taking initiative vis-a-vis the states was Kim Hyun-wook's statement. And I think after that Kim Hyun-wook statement, North Korea is continuing to take initiative, try to tame the conditions that's provided by the United States, and make the summit meeting to be more favorable to North Korea, and trying to change the rule of game now. For example, there are many issues that North Korea and the U.S. does not agree with, which is, for example, how to approach, how to denuclearize, the methodology issue. U.S. says that it will do a all-in-one approach. But North Korea says it should be, step-by-step issues, step-by-step approaches to denuclearize itself. So that's a gap between two countries. A second issue, I think, is that, as I have mentioned, the verification issue is a very important one, very stingy one to North Korea. North Korea does not want to accept that verification. North Korea says that complete denuclearization rather than complete verifiable, irreversible dismantlement, which means the verification issue is a very important issue that would bring out a possible conflict between two countries in the process of denuclearization. So I think these kinds of agenda that is still in the disagreement between two countries, I think North Korea is now taking more initiative into trying to change the attitude of the United States before the summit is held, so that in the summit, in the agreement, North Korea would get more benefits and interests rather than the U.S. gets from the North Korea.
President Trump also today reiterated that the summit could be delayed, but that we will know next week whether the North Korea and the U.S. summit is still happening. Do you still, are they just in a process of negotiation, or do you really think it could be cancelled or delayed?
Okay, when President Moon Jae-in visited Washington, D.C. for the U.S.-South Korea summit meeting, I was expecting some big agreement between two Koreas or big changes of President Trump's attitude. First one was approaches, but Trump didn't say much about it. I mean, he said the same thing that he said before, the all-in-one approach. Maybe there will be some modifications, but the principle itself was still all-in-one, which is no change at all. And he mentioned about some kinds of regime guarantee issues after CVID of North Korea, but that regime guarantee issue, that card is the same. I mean, two countries normalizing their relations and also giving North Korea some economic investment and support, which is the same thing that Trump has said before. So in the summit, I'm not sure if what two leaders discussed privately, but at least at the press conference and press interview, what President Trump mentioned was something that has not changed from the past. So I'm not sure what this would mean. I think there will be more discussions between North Korea and the U.S. this weekend and next week in the working level talk and discussions and negotiations. And that's why they're very important. I think that's why Trump said we will know next week, whether summit will be held or not. So this weekend and next week, working level negotiation between North Korea and the United States, I think is very, very important.
If the US and North Korea summit is delayed, doesn't that set a dangerous Goldman's precedent? Because once it's delayed, it could be delayed again. Isn't there pressure on it to happen at this date that they've set for June 12th now?
I don't know. Maybe they would want to stick to it because, as you mentioned, if once it's delayed, it's not easy to come back and have the summit meeting again. I mean, two countries have tried to get a détente and rapprochement with each other. With summit, they want to denuclearize North Korea, but okay, because of two countries' different conditions, summit did not happen. Okay, next maybe delay, redetermine the summit date, but that itself is not really easy. I mean, there will be a lot of criticism from North Korea, inside the United States. Many other countries, including China, I think would try to open another pathway that will be more beneficial to China. So I think, considering domestic political scenery and also Northeast Asia diplomatic scenery, I think redetermining the summit meeting, I don't think it will be really easy.
Now, just briefly before we go, you just mentioned there, Moon Jae-in met with US President Donald Trump just on Tuesday, and now he's back in Seoul. There's some word that he might finally use the hotline that was recently installed between him and Kim Jong-un. The presidential office hinted this before, that he might use it and have a message from Trump to Kim. What do you think of this potential?
Yes, I think in the summit meeting between Moon Jae-in and Trump, they discussed, and I think it's time for Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un to talk about it over phone, hotline. what Trump and Moon Jae-in have discussed. I think they will talk about it and deliver it to Kim Jong-un. Okay, persuade Kim Jong-un to be more proactive towards some meeting. Don't be too negative, be favorable to the United States, for something like that. And try to narrow down the gaps of the two different positions of two countries. I think this is a very important positions of Moon Jae-in to take a very proactive role as a mediator between two countries.
Thank you, Professor. That's all we have time for today, unfortunately, but it's always great to have you here with us.
Okay, thank you very much.